And we're live with Jeff. Oh no, Bradley's just dropped out. Oh no, we're going ahead anyway. Darn it, we'll wait for Bradley to come back. So over to his Jeffness to tell us about this episode, and I'll put the slides on.
Okay, this is Homicide: Life on the Street, Season 7, Episode 20, which is called The Y Chromosome. Originally aired May 14th, 1999 on NBC. And there's a very brief, I wasn't able to find anything but a brief summary, so I may have to add a little bit to it to say what happened in the episode. But it says, when the men are nowhere to be found, Shepard and Ballard team up to investigate the death of a young girl who's a teenage gang member. With the wedding 1 week away, Billy Lou asks for Munch's help with her neighbor's abusive boyfriend. After Munch approaches him strongly, the boyfriend retaliates by coming to the waterfront and slamming Billy Lou's head on the bar. Munch claims he came on strong with the guy because his testosterone-riddled behavior was due to the celibacy Billy Lou imposed on him to make their wedding night more special. Billy Lou wants to delay the wedding until the welt on her forehead goes away in about 2 or 3 weeks. After Shepard and Ballard solve their case, Shepard reminds Lewis that his problem with her is not going to keep her from doing her job. So that's all that says. Obviously, that leaves out, any of the details of the case they were actually working.
Yeah.
I won't try to recall all of that. Oh, by the way, the episode was written by Anya Epstein and directed by Kyle Secor, who plays Bayless. So we had Bayless have about 3 lines in the episode because he was busy directing. But I can say in general, the rest of the gist of the plot is that the teenage girl was probably shot by the girlfriend of the guy that she was coming on to at a party, and then that girl was later shot by the original girl's sister. At least that's what they concluded, although nobody actually confesses to anything. So, and there's a lot of material about the way that the teenage girl gangs operate, as well as the equal opportunity theme and all that of what women can do, and whether they should get backup for going to talk to the dude and stuff like that. So that's the gist of it. Anyway, Ben, what'd you think?
I think there was a bit where Danvers said that they probably wouldn't be able to get a conviction and that they should go for manslaughter. And then there was a little bit where... So, Jeff, do you think that it's realistic, in your opinion, that Shepard would be able to hold that guy down on a table?
Well, yeah, for 2 reasons. One, because she, got the drop on him. He wasn't expecting it. But 2, also, I think she had him handcuffed. So he was a little bit physically restrained already.
That's true.
And, there was a little bit of it, not quite as much, but if you remember way back in Season 2 when they had the episode that involved the S&M Club, and Bayless kind of tries to get rough with the one guy, and he likes it. He's turned on by it or whatever, because that's like what he's into. There's a little bit of that in this, because the guy, when she's interrogating him, he's kind of like, he's getting a little excited at first, but then I think he didn't like it as much when he felt like he wasn't in control of it.
I think the first thing that comes to mind about this episode is that the acting was good. That's pretty much it, really. And that guy was tall and had big feet.
Which guy?
Had really big feet. I'll just go back to it. I just realised how big his shoes are. I'm going to pause that, and then I'm going to go back. He looks like a basketball player. This guy here, look at those boots. Look at that guy. Enormous feet.
My thought was that the colors were wrong. Like, these were supposed to be the guys who wear orange, right? But his bandana looked yellow. So I was like,
well, it's a little. Let's have a look. There we go.
It's the discount.
A little bit orangey, a little bit in between. Maybe it's faded.
Yeah, I guess. It's like, you gotta be careful. You fade too much, and then you're like a different gang. So you gotta watch out.
She's, what is she, 5'3"? She's wearing the heels about 5'5".
Yeah.
So he's probably about 6'5" or something. He's certainly got the proportions of somebody like that. Anyhow.
Yeah, what the one dude called her short and sexy.
Ooh. Right. I think you might use those two adjectives, Jeff, with her.
Yeah.
Yes, I thought all the acting was good.
That was a good scene. The one right there with the
the two
girls,
artisans
with the girl just making up stuff and stringing her along.
Yeah. Probably of the artisan temperament. Yeah, and we'll talk about later on because I think it's relevant where we can talk about how people of any temperament can be in a gang. It's not just all SPs. NTs might be the least likely, but the cooperative types, they can be members of it too. So NFs and SJs could also be members of.
Really? You think an NF is more likely to be in a gang than say like an ENTJ?
You know what, Bradley? That's a good point. The
And
ENTJ might assess though whether the gang is efficient or not. If the gang is like a good gang in terms of like being criminally efficient and stuff, the ENTJ might think, yeah, they've got the stuff. They have the right for me to join or something, or they could take it over.
Well, beyond that is why do you think that NTs are least likely to be in it, or how are NFs more likely to be in gangs than NTs?
Well,
Just wondering what the criteria for that was.
It's because SJs and NFs are cooperative. Yeah, go on, Jeff. I think we're going to say something.
Oh, I see.
No, I was thinking. I didn't say anything, so maybe
okay.
you're having a mental connection with me. But I was thinking maybe we should, get all the thoughts about the actual episode out before we start getting into the larger topic about gangs and types.
Yeah, that's for later. So the acting was all good. The Munch storyline seemed a bit. I mean, it's nice to have Munch in the episode, but it seemed a bit unconnected to the plot. Well, it wasn't connected to the plot, and it is a continuing theme with her and Billy Lou, and Stuart being a little bit, well, at least disheartened, if not jealous. Because he really likes Billy Lou. I don't know what else to say, really. It seemed a little bit fresh by... Maybe there was a little bit too much of talking about gender roles. I don't really know what to think of it. What do you think, Bradley?
Well, I will say, I guess I'll start with the Munch storyline because I think that was very, to me, it seemed like really cartoonesque or cartoony. That basically the whole point of his, or at least I thought the whole point of his arc was sort of like be a sort of a more lighthearted story as opposed to like the gang violence and gang culture. I mean, his involvement was the whole Munch thing was sort of like trying to liven the mood, but basically what happened is that Munch was going to get married and wasn't having sex because of it, and because of that he got aggressive, and because of the aggression he ended up not being able to have sex for even longer than he originally wanted. So that little that final groan he had when I forgot the bar owner or the bartender's name, but when she said oh yeah, sorry, Billy Lou. When she said we're gonna have to suspend the wedding, and Munch is sort of grown at the end of that scene was very, very cartoony in that Munch basically took an action that was caused by the not having sex, and because of it he can't have sex for longer, and that's like very cartoony, I think.
I think though that given that this is the 7th season, you just get disappointed that Munch doesn't change that much. Although not everyone has to change, because there are people in real life that don't change. It's just that we like to see character arcs in fiction.
Well, not in this case, because this wasn't like a story point. It was what I'm saying is that I don't think they added it into further character development or story or anything like that. So
it's a little bit sad that with Munch that we don't see any like feeling with him and like any sign of actual love. That it's just characterizing that as with sex with Munch. So you really does see him to lack the introverted feeling or just feeling in general in that. So it doesn't actually portray him very well.
Well, because the feeling that I guess you'd call it a problem with Munch being in sort of popping up as himself in various different shows is that people want to just see Munch be Munch. And if he's changing too much and he's not Munch anymore. Yeah. So I get what you're saying in that, he's sort of unusual character in that. Whereas most characters you want to see like change and change and change and change and change. For Munch is like it's sort of like a comedic relief, but also he's a serious character. So
I don't think that it's necessary for the characters to show a tremendous amount of change if they're written well. You can sometimes see over a long period of time some natural growth in certain areas, but I don't think it's it necessarily means the character is bad if they don't change a lot during the course of the show.
I can give you an example of the sort of thing that I mean. They gave an example of, apparently it was on the show Taxi, and Danny DeVito's character played a dislikable character. And I remember reading something that if you can show a different side, and it said that in a sitcom, if you showed like a softer side to an unlikable character, that episode would usually get an award. And so it's just like with Munch, is that we don't see another side to him where we see some sensitivity, where we see some feeling. It's just like ENTP persona, and that's it.
I would disagree with that. I think they have tried to do that with
Stanley. That's it.
In varying degrees. I mean, they had the episode about his past and the woman that he had a thing for when he was a kid, which we both agreed was not that great in terms of the way they did it. That could have been much better, but they did attempt to show some of that, and they have in some of his relationship that they've shown, and yeah, probably the best that he was in terms of showing emotion was when Bolander got shot, and that reaction was the time we really saw more of a genuine emotion from Munch.
I forgot what we said last week, but maybe they didn't do that because they underestimated his acting abilities, and you said at the start they said he was a terrible actor.
Well, I'm sure that's part of it, and the fact is that, the whole point of the show was really, in contrast to something like NYPD Blue or Hill Street Blues or whatever, this show, wanted to focus more on the job than it did the personal lives, even though it's obviously inevitably showed some of the personal lives that, it was more about how that impacted the job or how it was in relation to the job. And somebody like Munch is not, he's not one to spend a lot of time displaying emotion on the job. So I think it's realistic that he wouldn't necessarily, present a lot of that on the outside. It doesn't mean that he doesn't have feelings, of course. And I think sometimes some of that's come out in anger rather than in, romance. We had the scene, the very good episode with the scenes between him and Gardy when they clashed over the Vietnam stuff. And I think you saw some genuine emotion being expressed in those scenes.
Yeah, well, in that case, he apologized by offering him a free drink. I suppose it's a little bit of, there's a lot of subjectivity when it comes to characters. It's just me wanting an ENTP to be less ENTP and show some feeling. So it's just my own bias.
So you just want a character, you want a person to show something that they won't necessarily show anyway. So.
Yeah, exactly. Nature of the beast. He resembles an ENTP, and they have a weakness in that area when it comes to feelings. So it's just me, like, just be a little bit more ENFP. Let's show a little bit more of an ENFP. And then, like, if they'd write a character that was like a little bit of a blend of two types, I think that makes it more interesting.
I mean, obviously, the women he's been with see something in him, so they're probably people that are attracted to that type of personality. So
I think it's women that
not
like
exactly the best looking guy on the block.
Yeah.
So you know he's got to have something else to it than that.
Well, I mean, they're attracted to his wit and his intellect. We're seeing that we had that woman turn up, though I thought, whoa, she might be an ENFP in real life. And was she a comedian? She had like big frizzy blonde hair.
You're
and
talking
she had,
about Carol Kane, yeah.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. She just looked like she had that look about her.
Played one of his ex-wives.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah. But so about the actual episode. About the actual episode, I enjoyed it. With the question mark, I enjoyed it. No, I did enjoy it. I think this. I mean, the subject matter was very. I mean, when there's a show that's literally about women in general, it's like sort of it's really delicate thing, or can be taken very delicately depending on how you view these things. And I thought it was very, I mean, it's very well acted. Like, I think it was mostly genuine and wasn't any, as realistic as it could be. There weren't any unrealistic elements of it. You know, just the realization that that G hadn't assigned two female detectives to anything, and you know, what would happen if both. I mean, Ballard had the concerns about maybe they should call for backup, and also the male detectives thought, you know, that they might be calling them pretty soon for help. So
just one point of continuity, because you like joined late. For most of the series, they've only really had one female detective, and so right, they had that other woman come in, but she didn't do a lot of detective work. And then also they moved one of the characters and made her into like, I think the one that played Howard, they made her into like a sub-lieutenant kind of thing, and then they had this other woman go out. So it's like, it wasn't like they had like two women detectives all the while. So it's like, it's only just in the last series or two where they've had like two female detectives. So I can understand why G, because like for the first few seasons there was only like one female detective, and that was Howard.
Yeah, which was realistic because at the time David Simon followed the Baltimore homicide unit, there was only one female detective in the department. So.
Oh, well, that's good to know. So yeah, I mean, I guess it would make sense in that context of never really having to be cognizant of gender until suddenly two female detectives are walking out together, and then that's a moment where like, oh, wait a minute.
It's just sort of a given, you know, they've sort of looked at it as, well, female detectives, okay, but they've always got that male backup with them. Is always kind of it's just understood, and so it's kind of all of a sudden it's like, wait a minute, two women, is this a problem? You know, but he doesn't actually stop it. He just kind of remarks about it.
Also, in this case, one of them's 5'3", is a little bit. She's cast as naive and from Seattle. Like, we get the impression that that's not true. That Seattle is like all sunshine and rainbows and hardly anything evil. The criminal happens there, and the other one just got beaten up. So it's not like they're two women who are doing martial arts all the while and tough and like ex-army or anything. So there's a little bit of context.
They've established that Ballard is supposed to have really good detective skills, and that's how she got where she is. But yeah, she's not exactly intimidating, at least by looks.
Yeah, I suppose that's true. I mean, yeah. Well, we'll just leave it at that for now. We can continue on that if I see you need to bring it up again. But basically, I mean, my basic point was just I mean, as you were saying, like it hasn't, you know, no one's ever questioned like the status quo until suddenly something changes, and that's when people start reacting to it, which is pretty genuine. one of the genuine things I was talking about is that it wasn't so much that they were actively saying no, female cops can't be together. It just wasn't a thing until it was. So that was really genuine. And then the fallout of that was I mean, what to be expected. You know, the girls are talking about it, and the guys are talking about it, and that's you know, what I'd pretty much expect to happen in that situation. The actual case with I mean, the gang stuff was pretty much just gang stuff. You know, like it was. I mean, I think they did a pretty good job in showing, you know, what a all-female gang would look like, and it's basically the same as a male gang, just with girls. So, so I thought that was good. You know, nothing.
I'll just say one thing. Sorry to butt in. It's just one thing about it. Seemed to be like they're all part of one gang, but it's like that's like the girl half of the gang, and that's like the boy half of the gang.
Oh, that's true. Yeah,
because they did have that thing that was like EAB and EAG.
Yeah.
And the B was boys and the thing was girls. So it's like all part of the same organization. It's just that girls branch, boys branch of it.
Right. Yeah. I mean, but even so, there was like segregation, and it was
Yeah.
Yeah. Like I mean, separation or segregation. It seems like a bit of a loaded term, but yeah, it's separate. So.
But the same organization.
Yeah. Same organization. Yeah. I mean, it's not like
based on the street. So, you know, another evidence to the Guardian aspect that the what gang they were in was based on what street they grew up in. So,
right, yeah, I could call that a Guardian aspect. And yeah, also, I mean, why like go to it if there's a gang right where you are? Why would you like, you know, go a couple blocks down to be part of the gang and go back? That doesn't. That seems like it would be like a.
Well, you've got to walk past the street where you live in. If you're part of a gang that's further away, you've got to walk past those members who are near a gang.
On the way to the other gang.
Yeah.
So yeah, logistically, I mean, that would make sense.
But it also would be a rebellious thing to do, to join the rival gang, you know, as opposed to the one on your street.
That would be a lot of SP points there, Jeff, in terms of rebelliousness.
That's SP points. Yeah, so I mean, I think personally, I think I mean, the acting was generally good. I do think that some of the females were better acting like gang members than others. I think I think it was Crystal who was the one who got arrested at the end. I think she did a really good job of being like, you know, the sort of hardened person, sort of just, you know, being a sort of, you know, like gang hardened. She did a really good job of exemplifying what she thought, you know, it should be acted like. And then other people who are like less of key characters, I don't think had as much put as much effort into acting. Like they were like part of gang culture. They just sort of, you know, said the things that they'd say, but they didn't. I didn't get the fact that it was it didn't come from like a deeply held conviction about what they thought it would be like.
Yeah, they might.
Maybe it is the actual. I mean, someone who's actually been born or raised around that sort of culture would already be.
Yeah,
and actually act like that, regardless of if they're in a gang or not. So.
Yeah, she does give them a dressing gown. I'll just remember, like on Diagnosis Murder, and a lot of shows in the 1990s, they would just have that random multi-ethnic gang that you wouldn't see in real life. And it just looked so fake.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so there is a bunch of I think some of the acting was a lot more I guess gang authentic in quotes than others, and but
so what did you think of the two female leads though amongst the gang? Like the one that ended up getting shot, and then the prime one that lived through a lot. And the one that eventually got arrested, that character. You think that was pretty good?
I mean, I thought the one that got arrested was the best of them.
Yeah.
But that's because, you know, she got put through the ringer of, you know, having people, having two detectives up in the face and having to, like, defend her being hardened, whereas everyone else was sort of casually being interviewed, so
I thought this guy was good as well.
I thought he was so-so. But
Fair enough, there, Bentley.
I mean, but that's in the context of But basically, I'm using the one who got arrested as like the standard of
Right.
like.
Okay, gotcha.
Yeah, so it's like compared to her, it's like everyone else sort of seemed, like they didn't really get to do the deep dive into, the what sort of made them tick. So everyone else just, I mean, she obviously, I think the one who got arrested would have, she probably would have looked more. She would have fit in more of the rest of them if she didn't get, if there wasn't like the 5-minute conversation that they had about her life. No one else had that. So I think if other actors or characters got the opportunity to do that, then they probably show some similar depth. But because they didn't get that opportunity, it's sort of like you don't really get to see if they sort of can embody what gang culture should seem like, or if they just say, because there's like all of the superficial. That's a really bad word, not superficial, but all of these sort of like extra people just sort of had in the street, and just in their montage where they were Shepard and Ballard were interviewing people. In that montage, there was just like people like laughing and cracking jokes, and like the one girl who like pretended to make out with the guy so that they wouldn't get questioned, and a lot of that behavior was it's sort of like the generic, I guess, gang people being gang people. And then there's like that, and then compared to all this interview stuff is like a different level. So
I think that kind of behaviour, though, that's more artisan stuff within the gang. Like that kind of, like those two ones that were giving them false information and having fun. I think that like that's their artisan temperament coming through. And I suppose now we can talk about you can have people of different types, different temperaments be part of gangs.
Yeah, I mean, there's no reason why I think every member in the gang should be an SP. I do think though SPs are more likely to be like the have like bigger reputations for impulsivity and being rash and crazy. Like I guess all of the nicknames, the gang nicknames. Yeah. People who have the biggest reputations are probably SPs, but definitely every temperament can be in a gang, I think.
Yeah, basically when you have anything where you have hierarchies and structures and sort of ranks and things, which you do in gangs among other, basically any of those environments, you're going to see some of those same dynamics happening where the people that are naturally predisposed to being the leaders or the people that maintain order, are going to be there and filling those roles. So in a gang, the SP types are going to be more likely to be like the enforcers, but not necessarily the ones that are maintaining, things like how you get in, initiation requirements and all those kind of things. The things that are more like structure of a gang.
Yeah, I mean,
more probably by the more J preference characters.
Yeah, or like in the sort of like logistics of running a gang, because this is all illegitimate business, which is not being tracked in any, not being like government monitored in any way, but yet they're still able to keep the gang running smoothly, and that takes a lot of different temperaments, I think.
Yeah.
Also,
any group that's like entirely composed of SPs would probably not last very long because they're tired of it and move on to something else.
So this plot point here about, because they always said that there was a woman disguised as a man, and it was just this bit where why did they take photographs of her with a big Polaroid camera?
Probably just being stupid and not thinking as to what the ramifications of that were, because they were so proud of their ability to disguise her as a guy that it was showing off,
Yeah, and they could show it to others.
Look how good we were at pulling this off, and we fooled them, and not thinking that there was going to be investigating cops looking at the pictures.
Yeah.
because they are still teenagers. They're not really thinking ahead about what's going to happen.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's a very good observation.
Right, so we can see how SJs can be members of a gang. What about NFs?
Well, I was going to say for intuitives, there's a difference between like being gang affiliated and then being like an actual gang member, because gangs can like put pressure on, I guess, ordinary civilians to like do things for them, and I think intuitives are going to be like the people that they go to for like we need phones, this, like someone got we need someone to like run drugs, can you like put it through, or like money laundering, or all the sorts of like technical aspects, or like maybe like doctors or nurses, hey, he got shot, I'm not going to go to a hospital, but I know you're a nurse, could you look at this gun wound, or else sort of stuff. So those people who are like,
before we were recording, I mentioned to Ben a character who I've compared him to before, a character named Spinelli on General Hospital, who's a pretty obvious INTP character is like a IT guy for a mob boss. So it's an example of somebody who, is using their talents and the technology and stuff like that for specific purposes that, you can see why, that they would have a place in, a criminal organization or whatever. As far as NFs go, I have to be careful how I say this, and in case somebody watching thinks I'm comparing, the military to a gang. But there are some similarities in the sense of the way hierarchies and things work. But there, I remember a topic on one of the personality boards about how NFs could be in the military, and it was I kind of similar reasons occurred to me, is that an NF in a situation of military, gangs, anything where there's maybe violence involved or things like that, there has to be some sort of purpose where they're thinking that they can do something that in some way improves or changes things. And you can still have that belief even within the context of something that seems like, it's a criminal organization or something that you would think would go against the general values of somebody who was a, NF type. But they see something in that where, again, NF's biggest thing is relationships with people and bonding with people, trying to, improve or I'm not thinking of the word, be a catalyst for growth in some way in people. And so they could get involved in a gang, again, being in a neighborhood, being in that environment and thinking to themselves, this environment, this way that things are around here in itself is inevitable, but within that, I can do things that improve that. We had a character back in the third season who was a journalist, but he was kind of an advocate for people, not necessarily gang members, but people that were in sort of similar situations like that. He was, investigating what led to that and what, so he wasn't actually a part of the organization, but he was deep within what was going on between, that's how he ended up getting shot, by a drug dealer because of all that, that he was into. And so somebody actually being a gang member, probably would believe that by doing so, somehow they could improve the situation or make things better by their presence or by being a part of that.
Also, they might see another gang as being a bad influence on their community, and their gang might represent their community. And if they didn't receive enough love as parents, they might really connect with the bond in the gag of like, oh, this person will really have my back, and just get to that sense of connection like an SJ, but maybe they'll abstract it a bit more. I think the NFJs might be a bit more gangy, especially the ENFJ.
With the Luther Mahoney story, where his kind of cover, for his drug dealing business was he was this, volunteer did all this stuff for children and providing, a community center and all that kind of stuff. So it's definitely would be easy to see, NFs getting involved in that sort of thing, even if they were aware of the criminal side of it, that might not be the focus of what they were doing, that they would see, well, the benefits outweigh the negatives.
I can definitely see an ENFJ wanting to be part of such a gang. Because they like the structures and the powers as well. And did you say, Jeff, that I think you may have said in the previous hangout, did you say that ENFJs can be on loan from the SJs?
I don't think I used those specific words because I don't know what that means.
Oh, I think you said that ENFPs were on loan from the SPs.
I don't think I did. No.
Oh, okay. Oh.
Something I said probably led to something in your head coming up with that, but I don't know what it was.
All right, then I'll attribute that to myself then.
I mean, there are certainly outwardly similarities in terms of the way they come across between ENFJs and, say, ESFJs. There's obviously a lot of similarities where on the surface you might not be able to tell the difference right away if you don't know why they're doing certain things.
Yeah.
I think that's true of a lot of types when it comes to, like, sort of their neighboring types on the diagram.
Because it's like...
It's another reason why I don't like that over-focus on everything being about functions, because you can have types that don't necessarily have the same, in that case those types do, but I mean in some cases they don't necessarily have the same dominant function, but they still can have outwardly a lot of similarities. That a lot of people get, certain people that are ESTPs and ENTJs mixed up sometimes, because sometimes their outward behavior can look similar.
Yeah, and in fact, Model G would say that is a beneficiary shift, going from the tertiary function to the lead function, which is SETE. Anyway, we won't mention that. But yeah, ENTJs can act like ESTPs. Because it's like that ego thing.
The thing is whenever you're looking at the outward behavior, you just look at the actions and you don't know the motivation, then you can confuse a type for another because you're not seeing like what's led them to do that, what the mentality is beneath that. So that's the thing is, you're talking about somebody just on a very surface level that was looking at this and talking about gangs would be like, oh, this rebellious youth, so rebellion, it's a bunch of SPs. But as we've established, if it was just SPs, it wouldn't, the traditions and the hierarchies and the things that continue with those wouldn't stay the same. It wouldn't last.
Yeah.
And there certainly are plenty probably over the years that have been, it's a bunch of SPs rebelling, and then, that comes and goes. But the ones that actually get passed down generation to generation, whatever, those obviously have some other types involved in maintaining that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, we could see ENTJ joining a gang. Yeah, because Bradley mentioned that. Because I initially suggested that NTs would be the least likely because they're not cooperative, whereas NFs are more cooperative. They want to be part of something. And then Bradley brought up ENTJs. So you're right there, Bradley, that if an ENTJ saw it as an organization with promise and as an effective organization, they would probably...
And that's why I said J types in general would probably be more likely to be attracted to, the structure of something like that. Whereas, an NTP might be less likely to. If an NTP is in a gang, it's probably because there's some, kind of like Bradley said, there's some specific skill or something that they feel, that they provide.
Yeah.
That nobody else does. That's kind of the reason they're there.
And I think INTP is probably INTP and INFP, but I think INTP is like the least likely unless they've been like co-opted to be like part of it, like Spinelli or like a special IT skill.
Yeah, because in Spinelli's case, it's not like he's just, doing this for random thugs on the street. He's working for a well-established criminal organization that's been around a long time. So it's sort of like he's a hired, where you have the hired guns or the hired enforcers that are probably more ESTP type or ISTP type characters probably. In his case, he's a hired technical guy. So.
Yeah, I need to see more Spinelli. What I've just noticed now is that they've got the colours on the frame and stuff, and like even the rows there, it's the colours, still the colours of their gang. And I think that's underneath. It says it ends in G. So what did they call it? What did they call the gangs, Jeff? Because this was like for the girls, so it ends in G. Is it AIG? What do they call their?
I think E. I think it was an E in the middle. I could be wrong.
Was it something like? Oh, no, it wasn't something like East Baltimore Boys or something.
No, they were both streets, but I forget.
Yeah.
One of them was EAB because it was like something Avenue, something Avenue Boys or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
So the other one was another street name, but I don't remember it now.
Yeah, but that could be an E. Like it doesn't have to be an I, because the candle's blocking it, so it could be a different letter.
Where does it go? There it is. Oh yeah, we can't really see. Anyhow. So yeah, I mean, ENTP might be a bit too weird to join. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah, I have a hard time that. I know it's a stereotype sort of, but just from the ENTPs that I've been acquainted with, I feel like it'd be tough for an ENTP to be part of any organization where they've got to keep a lot of secrets because they just tend to be, they tend to just be too loudmouthed for that to happen.
Yeah, they look talker.
Just talking about stuff.
Yeah, especially themselves. Yeah, that would be interesting. Yeah. But again, that would be more in like organized crime, like technical crime stuff.
Yeah.
That's where the NTPs would all come in.
Well, we already, I don't think we ever settled on what type we for sure thought Luther Mahoney was because we discussed possibilities, but there's not really enough of his motivations delved into to really know for sure. Maybe
ENFJ. I don't know if he talked about NFE things. I think you said at the time, did you say something like ISTP or, because I think you were saying the STP.
Yeah, I felt like he was definitely a thinker, but I'd say, he could be an NT or an SP depending on what his motivations for doing things were, like what he really got out of it, because you don't really get enough to tell whether he was. No, the way, in his final episode, the way he comes off definitely seems more SP because it seems like he's flustered by what happens and he's much more tactical in the moment thinking. He's not thinking ahead, so that would tend to make me think more SP, but it's hard to tell.
I remember those conversations because we were thinking about, I remember it now, it's flooding all back because remember we were talking about tactical intelligence and strategic intelligence. Yeah. And we were talking about Mahoney, about when he was being strategic and then when he was being tactical.
So for more on that, folks, you can go back to some of our season 5 videos where we talked episodes that featured Luther Mahoney and all that stuff.
Yeah, so if you get to learn, and you watch all these reviews, folks, you will learn about Kersey temperament theory. Pretty much.
Somewhat, yeah.
Somewhat, and with goodish examples, I would say, especially for the sensitive types.
As far as my general thoughts on this episode, I think it was kind of meh. It's one of those which sort of feels like another show besides Homicide because it seemed like there's a little bit of cliche stuff in it. So it kind of had that feeling of more like another one of those 90s cop shows that didn't last very long, like New York Undercover or one of those, it had that sort of feeling where the stuff that makes Homicide good was not really as present in this. I agree with what Bradley said about the Munch plot. It was there sort of for comic relief. You could say dark humor, but it's like it still doesn't really add much. And so it seems like either don't have that at all or do a little bit more of it. Instead, it was almost sort of like an afterthought. And when I read that recap that focused more on that story, you would have thought more of the episode was about that than it really was. I liked her. I liked the Nisi character. I thought she was well performed. And, I liked the line about, when they say she's dead and she's like, so she's still a hoe,
Yeah.
So it showed the perspective there where, and a lot of that stuff was kind of establishing that these people they were dealing with are sort of their own culture, where they're seeing things in a certain way. This is how you take care of things. This is the values. There was a values contrast, whereas the main characters are kind of looking at it like, we wouldn't get into this situation where you've got the father of your child is, getting with other women, and it's like, rather than that being a reason to leave the guy, it's her fault, take out the woman, and so there's, not to say that attitude doesn't exist outside of gangs, but there still was a definite kind of establishing of there's a contrast in the way that they're looking at these situations, because they're not part of that culture and don't really understand how those things are dealt with within that. So they kind of, have that little discussion at the end where they're talking about, if you had grown up in this, around this, what your perspective would have been the same. So, I would say it's not so cliche that it turned into some, after school special type thing. I'm not saying it was that, but it lacked some of the depth and some of the just compelling things in a better Homicide episode that I expect. So to me, it sort of seems like not exactly Calm Before the Storm, but it is sort of, to me, I called it the last mediocre episode of Homicide because the last two are pretty strong. We finish on a good note, I think, and this was sort of the last one where I kind of go, it's kind of meh, it's kind of there. It's not bad, but it's not good. It's just sort of floats along, and some things happen, and there's some compelling moments, but overall, it's not like anything spectacular.
Right. I think that, as I said, I liked all the acting with the guest cast. I just thought the dialogue between Ballard and Shepard was a bit uninspired. All the stuff dealing with the issue.
What do you mean by uninspired?
Well, it just wasn't. I mean, like other times they've covered, like, it just a bit dull. Could have been done better.
Yeah, I agree. This is kind of the same impression I got, that it's not bad. It's just, it feels like is something missing, or just something not needed to be punched up in some way, and they're just it's. It's like they touch on the surface of some things, but they don't really ever get into any of them.
I mean,
Which, I'm not saying is unrealistic, because obviously there's plenty of real conversations that are like that in those situations on the job. And so, it's not, I'm not even saying that it's not realistic. It's just not necessarily that interesting.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, it's like, all the points that they make about men in the workplace and in that role, it's like all the obvious stuff that you've heard 10 times before. And so that's what I mean, sort of like uninspired. It never went beyond that and made an original point or an original nuance.
Yeah, and episodes like this, like you said, when it gets to season 7, and there's kind of that feeling of we've seen this before, and when it comes to like the aspect of the younger sibling being introduced to the gang culture and that kind of stuff, we had a better example of that, I think, back in season 3, when you had the one with the two mothers, that one son shot the other son. And
that was great.
Their little brothers were playing together, and the one mother is like, maybe they could become friends, and then she's like, well, then what? What happens when he finds out that his older brother is the one who shot his older brother, So it was a much more compelling, scene, because you had that aspect. Whereas this, you have the girl clutching the bandana, and there's sort of the symbolism of that, is she going to continue in those footsteps? So it was an attempt to do that. It just wasn't as good an attempt.
So, Jeff, what was that episode called? Because we can show Bradley that after this review.
I think it's Every Mother's Son.
Yeah.
I think it was called Every Mother's Son, but that was, one of the ones I gave a 10 out of 10 back from season 3.
Yeah, there was that great scene where they met in the, what did they call it? The greenhouse, the fish tank,
the aquarium, or the fish.
The aquarium. Yeah, and so they met each other, not knowing that they were like Like one was shot the other one, and then the acting was just so good.
Yeah.
And then Three Men and a Dina we recommend as well. So I've knocked a point off because of the dialogue between Shepard and Ballard.
Ballard.
There's a lot of Erds, isn't there? You got Howard, Ballard, Shepard.
Yeah.
So I've knocked. Also, I've given it 7 out of 10. Would have been 8, but I knocked a point off.
All right. Well, if we're giving our ratings, I'll give mine like a 7.5, 7.5 out of 10 because I thought it was I thought it was relatively average, but on like the high side of average. So I thought it was not. I mean, to me, the subject matter was like Girls and Gangs is sort of novelty enough in itself, even if all the issues are the same issues. I think it was packaged in a way that has been done before, but not to death. So I'll give that like an extra half a point. So 7.5 out of 10.
And I would say it was somewhere between a 6 and a 7. I would say like a 6.5, but I don't like to give half scores, so I'll be generous and round up to a 7. But it's barely a 7.
Yeah, because it makes it harder for
negative. Sounds like I'm being negative about it, but it's not that. Again, I don't think it's bad as it's in itself. It's still better than a ton of things on television, but it's not up to the usual quality of Homicide. I'll just put it that way.
Yeah, and plus the half scores might make it more difficult for you to do your totaling up at the end of the season.
Yeah, right. That's the main reason I don't like to do that, because I just like to be consistent on that. You call it maybe one of my rare J qualities. I don't like to have those loose. And
so we given the episode points. I'll give Bradley an extra point for having the Arsenal scarf behind him and staying loyal to his roots.
Yeah, I have him. It says Arsenal scarf is here, and
so
I think I have an English jersey, like right there, if you can see it.
Oh wow!
Yeah.
Go
Sorry,
on,
you can go on. Yeah.
Right, so
we'll get the recap at the end.
Recapping the scores, I guess that was 2 7s and a 7.5 from Bradley.
Yeah.
So, join us next week for the penultimate episode of Homicide. I like that fancy word.
I like that word.
Which is called Identity Crisis.
Right, and then we're going to have the ultimate one after that. So bye-bye, folks.
Bye.
Bye.
Then after the ultimate, actually, the one we're going to get a TV movie. So bye-bye, folks.
Yeah.